Welcome to New Eden, traveler. I'm TiS, and I'll be your guide on this journey of exploration. Over the course of my near decade of travel around the cluster, I saw things that I had only dreamed about as a child. Sights that left me in awe of the beauty and majesty that is New Eden, and the crushing devastation that humanity could bestow upon themselves and others. There were many who inspired me along my journey, but only one I aspired to be like, Mark 726 of Eve Travel. His holoblog was a terrific guide to every new region I encountered, and I hope to bring it to life for you in this series. Join us as we explore and share with you some of the most fascinating sights the cluster has to offer, from humanity's humble beginnings to whispers of tales shrouded in mystery that have become near legend. I hope you'll join us in this endeavor to explore our universe together. Somewhere, something wonderful is waiting to be found.
Welcome to Talking Stations. Today is Wednesday, December 22nd. I'm your host Shen alongside our panelist / engineer, Nick Bison. Yeah, so just like every Wednesday show, we're going to look at some battle reports to start off. And then we're going to move on to the Winter Nexus bundle deal. And then lastly, we're going to discuss something related to Dunk's recent post. So the first battle we're going to start off with is in Venal. So this one, as you can see, is between Snuffed Out and Fraternity, or the Winter Coal, basically. You see Lord of Worlds Alliance, that's part of Winter Coal, and basically everyone on the right side are from Winter Coal. So the strategic objective in this case is pretty clear, right? It's a hull timer of an Athanor. And we can see from the kill mail that the objective is won by the Frat side. Yeah, so with this battle reports, we see that Frat brought in 2 Minokawas alongside with the Drake Navy issue fleet, along some subcaps lodges like the Bassies. And the left side is a bit mixed. So we have the Tengus. There are Tengus from Dark Side and there are legions from the Snuff side. And then alongside with those legions, we have Guardians. Also from Snuff. So in this case, there's no cap lodges, like there's no apostles on grid from Snuff, but there are those what's it called? Guardians, Guardians with them. Yeah, so wait, what's you going? I can't recall anything that's really, really important, to be honest. But yeah, maybe just me not being so familiar with the Northern Hemisphere. I mean, it is NPC nullsec, so I guess it's just an R64 moon, I would assume. Yeah, definitely. So I just want to mention like the fact that how or why they will lose so many Drake Navy issues. So Drake Navy issues is similar to SERPs. They don't have the speed of SERPs, but they do cost approximately the same. And just like any like other shield doctrines, especially with Caldari ships, they have a really, really big EM hole, which means that if people shoot them with EM type of ammo, then they're gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's always. I mean, the astronauts must be on moon, but we just don't know which one it is. Uh, just like I mean, astronauts in NPC space, or is maybe just like a local tether point for daily activities. And that can be really important in some NPC now when there is not going to be any structures, the NPC structures especially. Okay, sounds good. So as I was saying with the Drake Navy issues, they have a really big EM hole, and Snuff brought their Legion doctrine, which means that, as we all know, energy turrets they can only output both EM and thermal damage, which means that they punch in that hole really, really well. Same thing with the Bazzies, right? T2 Caldari, their biggest fear is the EM damage hole. And that's one reason why they lost so many. It hurts really badly when those legions hurt, when legions hit those Drake navies. And Drake navies, as we know, they are missile ships. So what they really relied on is really the signature radius of the enemy ships. And with legions, most likely, I mean, in this case, because there's none lost in this battle, so we can't really tell. But most likely it's going to be the AB fit legions, just like other AB hacks, where they're 10 mm AB fit, which means that their signature radius with no shield extenders is pretty small compared to, let's say, a Serb or a Munich fleet with their micro warp drive on. That's going to create a really, really big signature radius, which means that Drake navies are not applying that well. So I think that's the two key points. They will lose so many of the Drake navies and eventually basically lose control of the field. So those caps are sit ducks and then basically waiting to die. Yeah. So from this battle is Snuff versus Frat, and from our next one is also Frat. Is also Snuff. So and it's also Snuff versus Frat. So this battle happened in Veil of the Silent. So Veil Silent being the home of fraternity, right? So we can see that it's right beside low sec systems in Longtrek and the Forge. And with this one, we're seeing a significant difference in number, right? Snuff only brought in like about 60 people, and Frat brought in about 150 people. But the is class on each side is not that even, right? So what we're seeing is a loss in a Vendetta and the Erebus. And to keep in mind, those two ships, their value on this battle report is not really their current value, right? A Erebus just with hull is about like 100 billion plus, and with those capital sized modules, they can easily count up to 120 billion for some of them. Similar thing to Vendetta, right? After so the special thing about the Serpentis faction capital line is it costs extra materials, and with the last with a patch that significantly increased the amount of input material that's needed for super caps and caps, it got exponentially harder to produce the Serpentis line. The Vehement, the Vendetta, and the Vanquisher, all three of them is incredibly pricey right now. So 134, 133, 134.5 billion on the Vendetta is not really accurate, I would say. It's much, much more than that. So the story here is basically Snuff gated Apraxis, and the Frat and friends decided to drop on it. And yeah, so we see that this is a bait. Clearly, it was a Praxis gating around. It was a bait because it's hull tanked. So if you're going to see the kill of that Praxis is hull tank is very tanky, and it's hull tanking is really good for baiting because people think, oh, this is maybe just armor fit, right? It's just a bit of armor and maybe a bit of shield. And now when they're into hull, they think, oh man, this is really where the tank is from. So even though it's an AOM account, but yeah, right there. So yeah, we can see the reinforced bulkhead at the lows right there, and then we see the amount of tackles, the amount of E-wards in the mid, and the blasters on the highs. So they basically dropped the Erebus and the Vendetta on it, and they got counter dropped. So they were dread bombed. And so a few of the dreads got out. So we can see the video that's captured on the snuff side. So that video shows it started after the dreads are committed on grid. So I'm going to start the video. Yeah, so we can see that so this pilot have what's called the Nagrafar being committed on grid. So we're seeing immediately that they go into overheat on their guns and start mutating the Vendetta. So yeah, I mean their primary is the most expensive ship on the grid, which is the Vendetta in this case. Yeah, so so right here we're seeing that their first siege cycle is read right away, so which means that they have confidence in themselves that they're able to take down those two capitals plus another Inazu, which is like a Galente fax. Wrapping those two, they can take all of them down in one cycle, which they did. And when the frat reinforcement came in, so first wave of them is mainly dictators try to hold down those Nagafars or those dreads from escaping, and but they were basically one shot and being popped by those legions that's on grid. So we can see one comes later down when all of them is dead. So we're going to see Fat basically at that time feeding dictators try to save, try to hold down those Nagafars so that they won't leave grid. They were not really successful. So I think the Frat side, if I'm not mistaken, lost about 3 dread. Snuff side lost about 3 dreads. Yeah. Are you back? Are you on your voice, Nick? Yeah. So there are about 3 dreads that are lost. One of them, well, I think at least 2 of them is being killed by the Munich fleet, which is a reinforcement fleet, and that's a fleet that came in after. But there's one Nagafar that's killed by the doomsday of that Erebus. So 3 lost, but overall it's a really, really it's a positive fight on the Snuff side. And again, it's a loss of a faction super. So I think it's really worth us to mention it. So speaking of losing supers and titans, we have another fight happened in Amamake that also involved Snuffed. So in this fight, we're seeing what is it called, Leviathan that's being lost, not from any of the sides, not from PenFem, not from Frat, not from Snuff, but is lost by CCP. Yeah, so this battle happened in Hemitar, which is right there in one of the Mimitar regions. So during this fight, we can see that like the Titan or the praise on this battle report is a CCP Titan. All right, so that Titan is, how can I put it, not really the fit that you really expect from a not like standard doctrine, right? So we're not seeing any sort of like weapons that's like capital size, right? The only thing we're seeing is it's a doomsday and smart bomb, but there's no cruise missile, there's no XL cruise missile, and there's no XL torpedoes, nothing like that. And we're seeing shield extender. Well, that's normal to see on a Leviathan, but what's not normal is the low slot, which is shield rechargers. So this is clearly CCP Alpha coming out with the Leviathan to have some fun, to spark some fights. we did see like a big fight out of this, right? We're seeing caps committed on both sides. I don't know how accurate this battle report is, because it's fighting of objective about an objective that's not really, I think, committed from either side. It's not a Snuff Titan. It's not really like a Panthem Titan. But what we are seeing really is a bunch of revelations and phoenixes that are lost on the other side of this BR, on the right side of the battle report. Yeah. So the snuff side is the Legion doctrines that we've been seeing. On the right side is a bit of a mixed fleet. So we're seeing some Legions, we've seen some Serbs from PL, some Bazis going along with, probably not along with Serbs, but some Zealots from Frats. So we're seeing Guardians probably with those. Yeah, so this is just a low sec fight. So we're seeing some actions in low sec as well, even though they are performed by some of the big null sec blocks. But these fights are happening in low sec, which means that their mechanics are really different from null sec fights. One of them is no bubble and tie-dye and things like pods are able to get in away, right? Tiding along with the no bubble one. I think Snuff did really have the advantage in terms of the knowledge. They have much more experience fighting low sec than some of the other people on this battle report. Yeah, so let's move on to our last one, last battle report that we're seeing. So we can't really talk about wars or actions happening in OSEC without talking about the South Theater. And this time, the battle happened that we're going to talk about is in Fifth of Alice.
All right, and can you hear me at this time?
If you can, put a yes in chat, please. Yeah, so this time is a clash between the Imperium. So we have Gunstorm. We have the RMC, so that's Red Man's coalition. So that's red. What could possibly go wrong? All those people. On the right side, we have TiS and Fire. So TiS is there, and then Fire consists of Legion of Death, Severance, Celestial Empire, and all the followings.
So I believe they just said they could hear me. I'm hoping nice. Is that accurate?
Nice. Yeah. So this battle, of course, the objective in this case is a Fortizar. So a Fortizar coming out of Hull Timer, and Imperium's coming to assist RMC for this. So at least in terms of numbers, if you go back top, we can see that numbers are not that different from both sides. One's 234, one's 237, but its loss is really different due to two faxes, basically two capital ships, and that Fortizar that's lost on the Imperium side. Yeah, and what you're seeing is really the standard Gnostic doctrine, right? Munings on Munings, and some Jackdaws as support, Serbs, and what's not really that common, but it's been more and more common nowadays. It's the Typhoon doctrine for defending structures. So as we know, Typhoon is a battleship, and battleships are not really good for moving around, so not really good for moving very far to attack enemies. But what they are really great at is sitting there and just defending your structures, especially after the removal of those sick bonuses on hacks. Sometimes cruise missiles can really hit hard on those hacks.
But and that's a heck of a spot right there. That's right in between, two jumps into Impasse, 3 jumps into Esoteria. So kind of a good spot there, right at the crossroads.
Yeah, and I think that's why that is a really, really important strategic objective, and that's why both sides are really committing on the battle. Yeah, so Yeah, so wars in NoSec, especially in the south, is still happening, and yeah, so keep eyes out, everyone, for this war theater. There's gonna be more happening right now. With the disbanding of Evictus, we're gonna see whether or not the power dynamic in those places, in at least USTZ and EUTZ, is gonna change or not. There are definitely interesting things happening, and we'll report them as they happen in the following weeks. So let's move out of the war. Is there anything you want to mention, Nick, before we move on?
No, I'm good on that, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So our next things on the list is the Winter Nexus bundle. So this is 50% off on the 3-month Omega plus the 3-month multiple character training certificate. So the MCT stands for multiple character training certificate. And that's basically a thing you can put on your account, and then you can train at least 2 characters or 1 more training queue at the same time. And this is generally like one of the most lucrative deal that you can get. A lot of people rely on this. I think this comes quarterly, which is really convenient, right? 3 months is a quarter, so people just keep buying this, so they can have 2 accounts, 2 characters on their same account to be able to train up. One maybe like a spy account, or like a account that's deployed in enemy region, and then one just their main account, let's say, at home.
And with it only being a couple days till Christmas, this is something your significant other, you can drop that hint. Hey, it's not that much for a gift.
Or this is going to be a great starting point for people to get their friends or family members to start playing Eve. It's always a good deal.
Absolutely. Yep. But yeah, that is a good price break on that. I'm actually looking at it going, I might do that.
Yeah. So this will end, I think, before the 3rd of January, which is about before January 3rd. So it's a week and something left, so you still have time to decide. Yeah, with all of that out of the way, we can move on to our main topic of the evening, which is this blog that Dinkle has put out. So Dinkle, as people may know, he is a former CSM member and the leader of Brave Collective right now. Yeah, so he put out this blog by him. This today, I think, or yesterday, and it's basically talking about the changes from CCP over the years on the shortage or on the ecosystem of Eve.
And Dunk, leads off with the why Eve Online players are angry. And if you haven't, I'll link this so you can take your time and read it. But the man makes a lot of good points. Whether you agree or disagree with him, the reality is it's well thought out, well presented, and you're definitely going to get his point of view, which is shared by a good-sized population of the gaming community on Eve.
Yeah. So his first point, that we can see here in bolded letters, is CCP is no longer the janitor of New Eden, and is now the angry coach telling player they aren't doing it right and making them run extra laps. Players have lost trust in CCP to create interesting new paths in the game. So Nick, what do you think?
I get where he's coming from. Dunk's no fool. I kind of take a slightly different path on that, where I don't think they're really saying we aren't doing it right. It's literally that CCP has allowed us to run amok for quite some time, and there's items they believe need fixing, and that's kind of where they're focused. They haven't really told us all of what they want to fix. At a high level, absolutely, I think they have. But there's, I think anybody who's objectively is going to look at some of the gameplay and not just null. It's definitely high sec and possibly other areas that need some serious attention. But yeah, I still trust him. I hate to say it, but I know Dunk speaks for a good chunk of people when he says this.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the points that he mentioned in this blog is that CP has not given us any of the KPI or the key performance indicators to say what are we on, like what kind of progress that we have right now, right? Whether, let's say, the price of Plex reached this price, that means we're good, or there's not really any hard facts or hard stats that we can measure how the game is looking like just from players' perspective. All the data that we're hearing is from CCP. It's not really something that we can see with our perspective as players.
And like I said, I'm not going to deride Dunk at all for his belief system, but I'm definitely a bit on the other side. With a lot of it, what needs to be fixed. I don't want them to tell us 100% of what's happening. I don't think that's what anybody would reasonably want, because we're EVE players. We'll hop on the test server and game the hell out of it before it ever gets live. But as far as where we should be at a healthy economy or a healthy ecosystem overall, yeah, I don't want them to tell us that, to be, not completely by any stretch, because we're EVE players. We're going to screw them over one way or another. We'll figure out a way to go against it.
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting point, right? It seems like nowadays, a lot of times when there's a change, there's going to be someone who's going to complain. Maybe it's the same group of people, maybe it's different. But what you're hearing is more like, well, this is how I feel like there are more and more people who are on that side of the conflict, right? Every change is going to make someone mad. And with that, someone's not going to be happy about it. And the more people are not going to be happy about it, the more people are going to join that side, and that's just a rolling ball of just keep going downhill.
Mm-hmm. Now, he does bring a number of really solid points. Okay, like changes in the market system or in the tax rates implemented to pull ISK out of the game, because when you have individual players with multi-trillions, it's kind of silly when there's some folk scraping to make that first million. But that aside, he mentions about that they didn't like the one isking of the marketing, and he describes it as a punishing behavior that CCP did, to like stop the one isking. And it's like, I don't think too many folks would disagree that it was difficult to be a marketeer fighting a one ISK bot out there that was updating every time anything got popped up. Now, that I think he was just using as an alliteration and not as a particular talking point. But I think where he was going potentially with that was, they see something they don't like and they're going to change the game to adjust that. In some cases, yeah, like the one isking, yeah, I kind of agree with CCP on that one. In some of the others, yeah, a little tougher. So, yeah, you got to pull this bad boy up and read it. He's got some really good stuff. And he brings up here that whether you call it World War B2 or Vietnam, which I think are both great names, by the way, industry went into overdrive, produced a massive amounts of both capital and subcaps. But since the change in the industry, specifically that came out, I believe, in mid-April, cap production pretty much has ground to a halt. And a lot of it is folks trying to figure it out, adjusting what they do, and the supply lines weren't ready for it yet. And right now, the cost of building caps and supers and titans exceed their current market value because there's so damn many of them sitting out there.
Yeah, and what's missing, I think, to a lot of players, no matter which area you play, is I think people are expecting that big final battle that will happen between the Imperium and the Pappy side, right? So the final clash, and then there'll be tons of supers or caps lost during that fight, but that fight I think never came. So I think that's another reason some people are kind of disappointed, about the war is the M2 battle did happen, uh, but there could have been more that's being lost, and there could be more stockpiles that's being used after those big fights, right? So I mean, those fights takes literally like hundreds of Titans on field, and actually people using them, right? Some people may not have logged in for years, and they're hearing the first M2 fight, they're excited and they're resubbing and they're coming back, right? And then if the second one went well, I think it could have been a much bigger fight compared to the first one in terms of numbers, at least.
Yeah, I actually had to pause the chat, so I had to scroll back up and find Valamir mentions in there that that he does. There's good points, but it's a hard time hitting the mark because he has no data. All right, fair assessment, and and here's where I'm going to get snarky because of the next comment or remark, which is can't tell exactly what he's mad at. And I think I can. And this is, again, not meant as an insult toward Dunk by any stretch. But everybody's, and this is common with EVE players, whether you're high, low, null, wormhole, or those Poshvin freaks. CCP, you need to fix the game. And then when they try to, it's, oh, no. Go fix that guy's game, not my gameplay.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm not real happy with what's happened to my little high-sec world lately, being a small-scale industrialist. But I got to figure it out.
I mean, with the recent changes, I think that's the changes that really affected you, right? The worker changes, the changes to the barges and the exhumers. As a high-sec player, I think that's what really hurts, or that really actually helps. But for low-sec players with those roll calls, that's what really hurts instead. Yeah. So
the Rorks took it in the shorts without a doubt. You can't even sugarcoat that one. And I think anybody who's been playing for more than an hour kind of saw that coming because it was crazy good, since late 2016, 2017, I think, is when they kicked it out of the POS and gave it the excavators, and it grew huge at that point to where, even semi-retired Care Bears like me, was suddenly back out there with 3 Rorks just hoovering shit up. Excuse my language. But, and we knew it couldn't last.
Yeah, I think Doc 1011 brought up a really good point, which is adapt and overcome. I think this is a topic that I really want to bring up, which is to what extent adapt and overcome is enough, right? Some people say enough is enough, right? They adapt and overcome. I think more than a few times, people are going to get tired of it and not seeing the end of this era. And people are thinking, why am I keep playing this game? And maybe that's perhaps one of the reasons why the numbers are dropping, or they have dropped compared to, let's say, before all of those changes, all of this chaos era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to kind of hover on that for too long, but I just scrolled down a little bit. Some of his bolded points, and the second one on that page, he hits the nail right on the head. Says once those industry changes hit, which we mentioned was back in April, basically all cap and super cap production stopped. He's on target there, but we had 4 years of some serious cap proliferation. I mean, when there's hundreds, and that's not even an exaggeration, of Titans on the field at a time, Titans and Supers originally were, now, okay, accuse me of being bitter vet, and it's valid criticism. They're supposed to be strategic assets, alliance and above level, not personal hanger. Yeah, if I lose this Titan, I got 3 more because I can go out and mine it in a couple days. So I think that is part of what they would like to address. Cap losses are going to be necessary in order to do that. But right now, folks are going, geez, I don't know. Yeah, I might have 2 supers and 3 Titans sitting here, but if I lose one, I can't just go replace it easy anymore.
Yeah, and I'll play the newer player perspective because I am a newer player, which is that when we first came into the game, it was during, well, I didn't really come into the abundance. It was just only the shortage phase only started not too long. That's when I came in to play, and those ships in our mind is the price that they used to be, which is really easily replaceable. Is like a big expensive toy, and that's our inspirational goal, to be honest, for a lot of players, to be able to get your first super, to get your first Titan, and actually be able to play with those toys and to undock them and just sit on keep stars. Is, I would say, as a player, it's like that's really a nice experience, or just a nice thing. If you can think about it, it represents the amount of effort that you put into it, and the best thing that I can think about it is it's achievable for players, not back in the days with hundreds of oracles, but it's like just a player who just ratting and just mining and by themselves, not with any like big mining fleets. Just, yeah.
Well, and absolutely respect that, because you're that newer player. When you came in, a couple of years ago, this already was in full swing. So you didn't have the same experience I had when I started playing, where I looked at, holy crap, I was looking at a Thanatos, and I'm going, all right, to get in that, it's going to take me about 18 months of training, and I need to do these things. And, that was my initial aspirational goal, and I wanted to build it myself, which I did. And that's a whole nother story we'll get into another day. But yeah, I get it. From your perspective, when you came in, that Titan wasn't a 3-year, 4-year down the road goal. That was something I can get rapidly because that's what's needed, for my alliance, my group that I play with. And so we look at it from slightly different mindsets. Well, not slightly, greatly, but I absolutely get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what's creating all those different opinions out there, right? People coming at different eras of this game and thinking that their era that they came in is what it's supposed to be, right? A lot of people think it that way, and that's why when CCP reversed or nerfed the Oracle, a lot of players think that's the right move, but a lot of people saying it's not, right? So we're seeing really conflicting opinions just from the player base, not only player against CCP, but player against other players.
Yeah, and Sudacon in chat mentioned something really good. An example of the proliferation is the growth of groups that require you to have multiple caps plus a Sino alt. And that's very true. When I first moved out to Null, all right, the alliance I joined, we joined, the core I was with at the time, we joined. We were awesome because we had 2 systems and we had 1 carrier. And that was enough to move out to drones at the time. And then later on, for the longest time, I was the only Rourke pilot in the core and one of 3 in the entire alliance, because it wasn't cool. You had to sit in the POS and boost everybody. And shortly thereafter, it was, okay, you need to have Dread, you need to have your Super or Titan, a Dread alt, and at least 1 Fax alt. And it's like, what do you mean? I now have to have 3 2 or 3 accounts just to be part of this group.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? People who are just joining this game, did this game in the era of scarcity or the era of shortage phase. After a year or 2 years of playing, let's say if they do continue to play this game, how they feel when I wouldn't say the abundance era coming back, but after the redistribution phase, that there are more resources. I think it's going to be a much different mindset than what I have and what you have for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about the shortage phase and now with quote abundance. And I really don't call it abundance. I mean, because, when you're specifically, I'm speaking of, mining for the folks at the, I'm going to use the term, it's the base of industry in EVE is somebody out there with a mining laser or mining drone and getting it done. And I think part of our issue is when they call it wastage. You're wasting. Okay, you've got, yes, we're going to double the ore, but you're going to waste some of it with these type of crystals. And one of the ways I always tried to present it when I looked at it is you doubled the amount of ore, but I have the possibility of mining X percentage more depending on how I want to adjust my playstyle and my time. Is it worth it? If I got a lot of time, yeah, I'm going to throw T1 strippers on and I don't care because I don't want to lose anything. I'm just going to hoover. If I've got more limited time and want to bust through it, like if I know I have limited time on this moon, yeah, probably going to go with A types, possibly B types, but they got a little higher. They're going to mine a lot more, but I got a more chance of losing some. So my potential is less. So the potential to do more is what I like.
Yeah, and one thing that I really like, at least about the last patch, is they really give you options to either choose A type or the B type. I think a lot of times what people are upsetting about is the fact that their choices are getting taken away. With caps become more expensive, some people, let's say, they had the choice of using dreadouts or using the supers to rat, but now they don't have the choice anymore, right? They have like the 10 options back in the days, but they only have 3 nowadays, and that's what I think part of the player base is upset about.
Yeah, and Val
and
brings up
also there's one little thing that I thought about, and I think it's kind of interesting, which is the buff to Marauders and the nerf to Dreadouts. Or not the nerf, but the price spike of a Dreadout. I think they came in, not really like a huge time difference, or there's not a huge gap between those two. But what we're seeing right now is really like Marauders are somewhat replacing the job that Dreadouts used to play beforehand.
Val brings up another really good point. And, he mentions players like Dunk that have been in the game a long time, have, running big alliances, stashing some stuff. And to a certain extent, I'm going to throw you, Shen, in that same group, that because you could progress so quickly as a newer player all the way to that super or that Titan, basically caps in short order, it's like I've reached the ceiling. So any change to that without there being something higher is a bit of a blow, because it's like, where do I go from here? Now everything's just being taken away. There's nothing more to aspire. There's nothing bigger, badder, or tougher to get into than a Titan and a super, both flown well. Well, everybody's got those now. So what's the next challenge? And there's not that next challenge as a group or individual that's out there. So yeah, I can see where that feeds into a lot of the frustration.
See, that's actually another point that's really good, I think, which is, I think instead of changing the ceiling, they should add ceilings, right? They should add more difficult ships to obtain, right? That's where I still think the idea of T2 capitals or T2 supers comes in, right? They're better and more expensive version of the capitals and super capitals that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
So instead of changing the dynamic that we had beforehand, which is going to disrupt some people's play styles or some people's goal, which is going to create chaos. Instead of that, you should just add onto what's already a balanced dynamic. So adding things it will change the dynamic for sure, but it won't be as disruptive, I think, to the ecosystem as what we're seeing right now, where it's not going to change as much of the system as we're seeing.
Yeah, well, I think we've probably, other shows and have brought this up probably more than once, but the messaging on the dev blog on the new era of prosperity and was, I'm going to be polite, could have been done much better. It's not really a new era of prosperity. And I think everybody that saw that dev blog and saw what was coming went, no, not really. But what is it? What is it out there? And so there's a lot of difference. Folks, if you don't have the link to this, I'll put it in the chat again. You need to look at, read through it. Dunk has some great stuff in here.
And I would say welcome, Dunk, in our chat. Nice to see you there, and nice. This vlog is really, really nice. I think gives lots of perspective to lots of players have their voice. Yeah. So I mean, that was only the manufacturing or that's the industry side of all of this. But what I mean, if we look at, let's say, the military side or the sides we are actually using those dreadouts, I think. I mean. Do you think M2 would still happen? Even because M2 happened in like December or January of last year, which is like around a year ago now. But do you think it would still happen if the April death block came in before the battle?
That's a huge speculation. But at that point, I think everybody was still, the aggressing forces, Pappy, whomever you want to call them, were on such a high rolling through that I think they would have gone for it, because they were on an emotional high still, and it's like, we have done all this with just a few more steps. And would it have been that same level of commitment? I'm going to say, yeah, they probably would have. Because they were at that high thinking, if they do show up, we're going to take them. And, but yeah, I think they probably would. There was no lack of guts at that point in the war.
Yeah, but let's say if they really commit that, then, I mean, I wouldn't say it's hard because there are stockpiles of those capitals or those super caps out there. But really replacing those stockpiles is what's going to be really hard for those alliances or blocks if it happened right after the deadlock. I mean, people who are new player who just joined the game like less than a few months ago, before all of this, the capitals and super caps only require T1 minerals. Which nowadays, if you think about it, is, wow, how can that happen, right? Even at all. But yeah, that was back in the day. So replacing them wasn't as hard as what the amount of effort is not going to be as much as what it takes nowadays. So yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see or to ask one of the leaders, if we do get a chance from ask a FC about industry changing their game style. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion with them.
Yeah, does it change the consideration of what fleet they're willing to take out? If there's the potential, well, there's always the potential of just absolutely getting dunked in a fleet. That's happened to all of us, and it'll happen again. But does that change their mindset or equation. And in looking at the number of hacks going out there, doesn't seem to be so far.
But you gotta remember, hacks and capitals, at least nowadays, is really, really on different levels of difficulty to replace. I mean, back in the days, actually a T2 ship is harder in terms of the variety of materials that you need than just capitals.
Oh, yeah, absolutely correct. T2s are definitely much easier to replace by a fair margin, I believe, right now. But does it change the equation of how an FC is going to prosecute a particular battle or series of battles? Probably.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely going to see. So I think one last thing that I want to mention is the idea of rich gets richer. That after all those changes, the people who have or who had those big important ships like those Titans, those super caps, will get much richer compared to, let's say, a newer player who just joined the game and doesn't have so many assets, right? Maybe the biggest thing, the biggest ship that they have is battleship. I mean, making them more expensive, is it really widening the wealth gap, or is it shortening it?
Ooh, another tough one. The folks, you kind of go into the haves and haves nots. If you've already got it sitting in your hangar, you have. And potentially there's going to be capital level anomalies more and more balanced that would make them more profitable, potentially more dangerous than they already are to get out there and rat with. But gonna have to wait and see. I don't think I'm qualified enough to make even a half-ass guess on that one.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think it's really like a ship taking off from a shore. That if you're on that ship, then if you already have those super caps or caps beforehand, then it's just much easier for your life to be able to sit on those ships and then watch their price go skyrocket, rather than player trying to make catch up, right? To rat in their sub capitals and to be able to get to that point, and then now next thing they're seeing is a super cap, which is like what 80 billions away from them, and I don't know how many people will really think, oh, I can do that, and I will be able to keep playing this game when I get to that goal, because it does take a long time to reach that point, in terms of the amount of ISK you have to.
Well, that's also
obtain.
That's also the amount of dedication you have to the game and to your group. How much time are you willing to put in to do it? And I love this last section here. I'm sorry for jumping ahead, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't help myself. It mentions that CCP, they've done much better and they can. Everybody loves Eve and the players, which makes the recent communication failures all the more surprising and disappointing. I can't say I'm surprised totally, because they've never been great at messaging, but yeah, disappointed. They've got some good folk. They got some great folk working at CCP. They got a great game out there. I love playing. But yeah, could the messaging have been better? Tons. And I think we all agree on that point. I don't think anybody would really fight that one.
Yeah, I mean, with the messaging, I think they're looking at improving as well, right? When at least for the most recent patch, from extraction to the production dev block, they first used the word waste, and people saying, "Oh, that's not going to be a good word. That's not going to be as a friendly word as other words," and then they changed it to residue, right?
Which I and I've we've laughed about it off camera, but it's like, yeah, I've laughed about that. That's why in my own life, I had to turn that to it's the potential to get more.
Yeah, I think sometimes just the first impression of some of the words that they use, or the first impression that those words give people, is really important. I mean, that's a lot of people don't really think that much into the devlog after this first scene, right? The word waste. Wow. Is this really going to be waste? Am I really going to waste all the minerals or all the wards that I'm going to mine? And and the concept is already hard enough, and then he adds more confusing part, which is waste. The word waste, and he was like, "What?"
Well, it's not only, you know, if you're looking at it strictly from the resource gatherer perspective, I'm not wasting that resource. That doesn't hurt anywhere near as much to me personally as the thought of I'm wasting my time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, wasting resources on the moon, maybe, right, from a corporate level, but wasting time is really something that people, I guess, value a lot. People value their time.
Yeah, as folks are, you know, getting older, getting out of their quarantines and everything else, time is a much more valuable commodity. And, you know, as the player base gets older, you know, there's family time to consider. There's a ton of other things that take your time. So the folks that can dedicate a good chunk of time, hey, hats off to you, man. I'm jealous, to be real honest. For those of you who have to budget your time, like me, you know, I've got to really focus on what can I do in this 90 minutes to 3 hours I have uninterrupted right now.
Yep.
Val, video games are not a waste of time. Take it back, brother. Take it back.
Yeah. So I guess we end up with this message. We have a lot of angry players that feel the last 2 years were worthless pursuit of a unmet goal, wasting a lot of time and losing many friends who stopped playing. I think you do see the number going down, and you do see those carrots and those sticks out there getting, what is it? What I think was the words he used?
Few and far between.
Yeah, too far and far between.
Now the carrots have been few and far between. The sticks are pretty healthy. They're falling off the trees occasionally.
Yeah, so I guess I mean we are starting what's called like the redistribution phase. What's dynamic distribution phase now? So I mean, I feel like, or my hope is that at least in 2022 we can really get this thing behind us and focus on the bright future that we're about to have in the next 10 years, right? As CP said, heading to the third decade of this game.
Yep, absolutely. I got no final thoughts, man, so you can wrap up however you like, sir.
Nice. Okay, so I guess that's all we have. So today's Wednesday, December 22nd. I'm your host Shen with Nick Bison. Good night.
We're clear. It's rolling the outro.
Yeah, I think I should have given credit to Dunk at the end, but yeah, whatever.
He got a bunch in there. I mean, we took some opposing points of view, but you know, he got his pats.
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
I kind of throw a bunch of hard questions on you, but yeah, I think we had.
Oh no, I don't mind at all. I'd be curious to see how. Oh, it says we're still live. Audio's still live. Hot mic. Love y'all. Bye. My dang engineer's mic took over.
Wait, so they only hear you?
They're hearing us both still. They're laughing at me, man. I broke my Streamlabs. Sorry, guys. I'll have it fixed for the next show.
I mean, we